Welcome to Brick by Brick, where we'll be speaking to younger and older members of the LGBTQIA community, establishing a timeline of the efforts that have brought us this far and looking toward the future at the work that still needs to be done. This show is brought to you by One Roof Chicago, a nonprofit organization dedicated to building a queer, intergenerational housing community on Chicago's Southside. My name is Chijoke Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and today we'll be speaking with Jim Harvey, the executive director of One Roof Chicago. Hello, Jim.
Hi there, Chi.
Before we get started, can you let us know your pronouns?
So my pronouns are he, him, his.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Let's get right into it. Tell us your story, Jim.
Well, let's see. I'm a native of Chicago, and I think from an early age, at least by 14 or 15, I was just thrown in the deep end of the civil rights movement here in Chicago. So I did a lot of work with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, later on with anti-war, anti-draft activities, and so that activism just got into my bones from a very early age. I worked with a lot of political campaigns that were challenging the existing political machine here in Chicago at that time. And so that stuff stayed with me. And so it was easy for me to keep my activism hat on and bring me to where I am now.
I love that. It sounds like a very powerful time in your life. I guess that takes us to the next question. Can you point to a specific moment in your life that inspired you to pursue all of the work you've been doing?
Oh, that's easy. Meeting James Baldwin.
Oh my gosh. Wait a minute. You got to meet James Baldwin?
Yes. I'm
jealous.
I joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in January of 1963. And in the spring, they had their annual conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I was part of the delegation from Chicago that went to Atlanta for that conference. And I walked in just as James Baldwin was getting up to speak. And so I moved right down to the front row and made certain that I grabbed his cuff when he was finished and had a great conversation with him.
That would change my life too.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. And so I imagine after meeting James Baldwin, anyone would be radicalized. But that combined with the work around the civil rights movement, that sounds like it was a very moving time for you. Did that just launch you straight into further activism?
Oh, absolutely. Moving is a great operative word here because soon after, well, certainly by the end of 1965, I became involved in starting a local student movement here called the Umoja Black Student Center, where we were fighting to make certain that African and African American history became a part of the regular curricula in our public school system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, personally, I grew up going to a school that had a lot of Pan-African curriculum and learning a lot about those things before I was even 10 years old. So strangely enough, maybe I have you to thank for that. Very, very cool.
I'll take it.
Yes, take the credit. It's all yours. It's at least partially yours.
I'll take it, sure.
Wow. So, okay. At the peak of your activism, knowing that you're still doing a lot of similar work now, how did you hope the city would change? Did you have a specific goal in mind, or did you just want things to be better than they were?
Well, I certainly wanted things to be better than they were. We were just, I, along with so many others, were just so disappointed and angry about the way the city was run. The fact that services to the South Side and the West Side, where the Black communities were most prominent, were so limited until somebody wanted to get elected. And we were tired of that. And so we were constantly involved in trying to make some changes there. And of course, changes that didn't happen until, 73, when the old man died.
The old man?
The old man, Richard J. Daley, who kept his thumb on this city for so long. And he had to die in order for us to get him out of office. It's an unfortunate way to go, but that's what happened.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Wow. And so after Daley left us,
yes,
Do you feel like there was something that immediately happened, or did it still take a little bit of time and organizing to start rolling things into place?
Well, there was this coalition of people that began to really come together. We've been fighting the machine in this town since the early '60s. And so this coalition began to come together that this is our chance. This is our opportunity to really make a difference and to make certain that the right people got elected to local offices here, and make certain too that some of the needs were being met throughout the city.
Wow. Okay, so then as we talk about some of the successes and things falling into place after Daley, can you point to some specific wins and how you think we've been, well, first the wins, and then we'll get to what happens after those.
Okay. Some of the big wins were tearing down the public housing canyon that went along Dan Ryan, for example, Robert Taylor Homes, Stateway Gardens, all those high-rise prisons is what they were. And it was a way to just concentrate so many poor blacks in this city who had no idea of how they'd get out of there. So it was a city into itself, and we did everything we could. And I'm glad that finally, those buildings are gone. That kind of housing experience is gone, and people have had a better chance to see the rest of the city and what it had to offer.
Wow. Okay. And so if tearing some of that inadequate housing down was a win, do you feel like we've been held back in a similar area?
Oh, without a doubt, because where do all those people go?
Right.
That was the big question. Where do they go? And you go out with your Section 8 certificate or some other type of certificate that would guarantee a landlord, would get their rent on a regular basis. Well, it didn't always happen that way. Whole communities in the south suburbs, in the west suburbs, began to really push back. Some of the white communities here in Chicago alone would push back from that and rally around denying anybody the opportunity to move there.
That sounds familiar. Was that the NIMBY movement, Not in My Backyard?
That's the one.
Shoot.
That's
wow.
the one. That's the one. Yeah.
It's frustrating to hear that happens in multiple different places, Chicago or whatever. There are folks who are placing their own needs above those of the
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Frustrating,
Absolutely.
but interesting.
So housing's been on my mind for a long time.
Specifically, yeah. And so actually, that's a great segue. You've done similar work in Chicago, New Mexico, and elsewhere. Would you say there are overarching similarities to your work?
Oh, clearly, especially when it comes to the queer community.
Say more.
It's the same kind of issue. When I was in New Mexico, I was the founding president of a group called Casa Q, and it was after a study had been done to determine how many homeless LGBTQ teens were actually living on the streets. And warm weather communities tend to attract people, and they think that they can survive living on the streets. But it's not so, because people take advantage of you. You don't get food on a regular basis. If the weather's bad, you're exposed to inclement weather, and I could go on and on.
Sure.
And so there were thousands of teens, gay teens, who were living on the streets. And so the first step was to build a house. And so this city and the county got together and gave us this property. And here's where NIMBY kicks in. When people knew what was coming, I had to spend maybe 6 months doing nothing but meeting with people and assuring them that these are good kids, they just need a chance, and bringing them together to work with us. And it worked. It worked. We have a great community around Casa Q now in Albuquerque, and people are looking to put together more.
That's actually phenomenal to hear, and encouraging as well, because you're doing similar work now in Chicago.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little about One Roof Chicago.
Well, One Roof Chicago was actually founded in 2019 by a group of determined, dedicated volunteers who concluded that something had to be done to guarantee a safe and affirming living experience for seniors and young adults
In the same location.
in the same location. Because what that does is it provides an opportunity for mentoring and for all kinds of growth between these two populations. You know, young people don't want to talk to old people don't want to talk to young people. You know, if you're in a common setting and you've got somebody that's bringing you together, it makes for a wonderful outcome, I think.
Yes.
And so we said that the place to do this would be the Southside of Chicago.
Which neighborhood specifically?
We're in what's called Bronzeville now. Some people call it by its proper name, which is Grand Boulevard. And it's a very special place for me in particular because I was born in Grand Boulevard.
Really?
Yeah, right around the corner from where One Roof Chicago is going to have their building up.
Talk about coming full circle.
Yeah, the full circle is right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And speaking of full circle, do we have a few community partners working with One Roof Chicago?
We do. Full Circle is one. Full Circle Communities is our development partner.
Incredible.
And they've been with us now right along the way. We've got a great architecture firm that's working with us. But in addition to that, the community itself, you know, organizations like Task Force and who else? Who else? Affinity is one.
Right.
That's a great one. Yeah, and so many more.
That's incredible.
You know, it's just wonderful to know that when we do something, people come out and give us the kind of support that we need, and that'll help us go a long way.
That really is good to know, especially considering that you faced a certain type of, I don't want to say conflict, but you had the NIMBY folks pushing back against you when you were in New Mexico. Have you had any of that in Chicago so far?
Not at all.
Really?
It's amazing.
Yes.
It's amazing. You know, people in that Bronzeville community want to see things happen. And when I talk to people there, you know, some of the board members and I have done some legwork, going up and down the street and talking to people in the businesses and stopping people on the streets as they're, you know, headed to or from the bus or the L stops and letting them know what's happening. And the response that we get almost always is, oh, what a wonderful idea. And so if we keep that up, you know, we're not only going to be further encouraged, but we're going to be extremely successful.
I love that. And so while we're talking about success, let's dive a little more into that dream of the intergenerational home.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of the things that we hope to get out of that between having younger queer folks and older queer folks. What can they share with each other? What is the exchange that we're hoping to get there?
Well, older queer folks especially have a lot of history. And sharing that history, you know, all by itself with other people, particularly with younger people, you know, can go a long way because, you know, a lot of it's not recorded.
Yes.
You know, and somewhere along the way, there's going to be a story told that's going to hit home with a younger person that they can relate to.
Yes.
You know, it's not that younger people are the only ones, for example, who are forced to leave their family homes or forced to live on the streets. Older people can tell those same stories. And that in and of itself is a bridge that brings people together. So we're looking at those kinds of experiences that'll make a difference. The other thing is that we're doing a workforce development program right now.
Fabulous.
Where we're recruiting up to 20 young adults to go through a year-long education and training process in community health work and elder care. And we're hoping that by the time they go through that process, and maybe another cohort will follow, you know, with the same kind of education and certification, somewhere in there, we're going to have young people in our community, that will be able to provide some of the critical assistance to seniors who may be living with any number of health issues, including HIV, which is still, you know, something that's got to be addressed in the city. But if you're HIV positive, if you're a long survivor of HIV, and you happen to be a member of the community, or even more importantly, you happen to be a resident in that building, there's probably going to be a trained and certified young adult who can help you along the way.
And so it sounds like this location is going to be providing intergenerational friendship, housing, as well as workforce, or at least training in a career that one might not have had before. Kind of bundling it all together.
Exactly, and it's so important for young people, because there are a lot of young people who are still living on the streets or couch surfing, or experiencing some type of marginalization. And, our goal is to give people a second chance early in their years so that they can sustain themselves. And that's really important. That's valuable.
It really is. And just to break away for a moment, I'd love to draw attention to the themes that we're hovering over today, of the intergenerational friendship, of the relationships between the older and the younger LGBTQIA community. If anything, that is really what this show is about bridging that gap between the older folks who have wisdom to share and the younger folks who are looking forward in a very similar way to where you were when you were talking about James Baldwin and the civil rights movement. Everything you hoped for is everything we hope for. And we are so excited to be doing both of these things concurrently.
Sure. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better experience than being 16 years old, and surrounded by people who are working to make a difference in our lives, and they become your mentors, they become your supporters, they become, when I'm getting ready to graduate from high school, and people are saying, well, what do you want to do next? And you've got people to turn to who can give you some ideas to think about. Even open the doors and make certain that you get into the right schools.
Yes.
All those things played an important part in my life. Those kinds of roles are still in existence, particularly in seniors, and they can play an important role in the lives of young adults in our queer community.
I love it. Talk about paying it forward.
Paying it forward. You're absolutely right.
Spectacular. And so we're going to get a little loosey-goosey with it now.
Okay.
We've been talking about the work that you have done and the things that you've seen progressing over time. If you had, let's say, a genie, if you could grant one wish for the city, for your work, what would it be? Considering everything that you've been working towards so far, if you could reach an end goal, what would you want for all of us?
Well, if I could wrap it all up in one big ball under one big wish, it would have an A and a B.
Okay.
And the A would be the completion of One Roof Chicago's residences.
Yes.
And the B would be the realization that we have 20 to 40 to maybe even 60 young adults that we are responsible for them getting a second lease on life through the educational and training experiences that the Workforce Development Program would offer them.
I mean, I'm not quite a genie, but I would love to use this platform to help get it out there a little more. So what are some of the partners that are helping with the Workforce Development Program?
Well, let's see. Chicago Black Gay Men's Caucus. But our partners in the process are Cara Collective.
Right.
Then there's Malcolm X College, which has such an incredible and robust allied health program. And then Friend Health Centers. It's a federally qualified community health center program that will take the students, and once they finish all the education, they'll offer them internships and apprenticeships so that they can actually gain the additional experience, certifications, and on-the-job training.
I love it. Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about action. So, and it's really good to hear that this is happening, not just in a long-term thing, but it sounds like the timeline for this is very close. When would folks need to have applications in by for this program?
Well, we're recruiting right now for an end of October deadline for the first group. And if we can get them all in time, what will happen then is they'll start at Cara Collective for a 4-week-long program. if they miss that deadline and can convince us that they still want to do this program, Car Collective is prepared to say, well, we'll wave you on through and go straight to Malcolm X College and start a 2-semester long program in community health work and elder care.
Wow.
And they would start in January.
Wow. That sounds really cool. And considering it is, that gives us about 4 minutes, or rather about 4 months to make it work, doesn't it?
4 months, right.
That seems doable. Again, not quite a genie, but I do hope that we can make that happen in due time pretty quickly.
Well, we've got a great program manager who just started with us. His name is David Dodd. And David is one of those go-getters who's known all over the city and can put his fingers on so many organizations and individuals that can help get the word out and bring people in. And he's hit the ground running already.
Sounds like your wish is about to come true.
My wish is about to come true.
Excellent. And so we're drawing to a close soon, so let's look toward the future. What are your current projects and where do you hope to see them in the next 10 years?
Well, I want to see our workforce development program continue and grow. We're even talking about probably opening a workforce development program for seniors, which could be very exciting. Seniors who want to go back to work, who want to, at the advanced stages in their lives, learn a new skill and put that to work and get paid for it. You couldn't ask for anything better than that. So that's something that we'll be looking at as time goes forward. And we already talked to a couple of education institutions here that have continuing education programs that would almost pay for seniors to go there and learn new skills, and then get to work.
It's never too late to keep learning.
Never too late. Never too late. So that's certainly one. In the long run, I'm hoping that One Roof Chicago is not only going to be as successful as I know it's going to be, but it's going to be much sought after around the city and maybe even around the country. Because right now there's no program like it anywhere in the United States. And what we hope to do is model that. And who knows, somebody on the West Side may say, come over here and help us do the same thing, and somebody in the state of Michigan or Indiana may say, hey, come over here and help us do this. We will have learned so much through this process over this many years that we will have written the book.
Wow.
And we want to take that book and help you move on and do the same thing someplace else.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much for coming, Jim. I guess the final question is there anything else you'd like to share with us? What's a message you'd like to leave to the community?
Well, One Roof Chicago is still moving on, and one of the biggest and most important challenges at this stage, of course, is community support combined with financial support. So if you want to, you can either check our website, which is www.oneroofchicago.org, or you can contact me and I'll help you. And my number is 708-580-8844.
Just putting the phone number out there for the
It's
world
out
to know.
there.
Wow.
Make that number ring.
Okay, we're about to get some calls and texts from everyone.
Exactly.
You see that, y'all? Jim is so open, so willing to share, so willing to receive. We love to see it. Thank you so much for coming today, Jim.
Thank you, Chi. Thank you.
So
This
much.
has been great.
And again, this is brought to you by One Roof Chicago. On this episode, we spoke to an elder who had so much to tell us about history, about what's brought us this far, and about where we have to go. And on the next episode, we'll be speaking to queer youth who are activists in the moment, who are looking toward the future and letting us know what the moment feels like. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Brick by Brick. I'm Chijoke Williams, she, her, and we'll see you again soon.